Richard Hale here. What happens when a high-profile federal courtroom hearing spirals into confrontation so intense that proceedings are abruptly halted? When raised voices replace legal argument, when judicial patience visibly runs thin, when courtroom decorum, the backbone of the legal system, is suddenly the story itself. That's no longer just another hearing. That's a moment with consequences. Tonight, we're breaking down what reportedly unfolded inside that federal courtroom, why tensions had been building for weeks, and what it could mean for the case moving forward. If you value detailed legal analysis without the noise, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps independent reporting reach more people who want facts, not just headlines. Now, let's begin. Before we begin, a quick note. If you value independent journalism, there's a support link below. Now let's begin. Donald Trump's legal representatives were forcefully removed from a federal courtroom after a heated argument with the judge escalated to the point where bailiffs had to intervene. The uproar was caused by the judge's refusal to admit evidence that had been deemed inadmissible on 3 separate occasions. Trump's lawyers reacted by shouting at the federal judge. These are legal professionals, individuals who are expected to uphold courtroom decorum, being escorted out by armed officials while continuing to voice their objections. This wasn't just a usual contentious hearing or a moment of legal tension. It was a complete breakdown of courtroom order leading to Trump's defense team being physically removed from the premises. When federal judges eject attorneys from their courtrooms, it signifies a severe lapse in both the legal strategy and basic professional judgment. It's astonishing to witness lawyers potentially ruin their own case and careers in real time for a client who may ultimately blame them. Here's the background. Trump's legal issues have been mounting for months, with multiple cases progressing simultaneously across various jurisdictions. His legal team has adopted an aggressive strategy of delays, procedural challenges, and pushing every boundary of acceptable courtroom behavior. Their approach involves treating every ruling as illegitimate, every judge as biased, and every adverse decision as a basis for appeal. It's a scorched earth litigation strategy, focusing on creating appealable issues and media narratives rather than winning in court. According to Politico's earlier reports, tensions between Trump's attorneys and Judge Sarah Martinez had been simmering for weeks. The defense team repeatedly tried to introduce evidence during pretrial motions that the judge had explicitly ruled inadmissible. Each time they rephrased the question or took a different angle, hoping to sneak the material in. Judge Martinez issued increasingly stern warnings that further attempts would result in sanctions. Here's where it all collapsed. During a hearing, as reported by CNN's Courtroom Observers, Trump's lead attorney, Todd Blackburn, made yet another attempt to introduce the forbidden evidence. When the judge immediately upheld the prosecution's objection, Blackburn didn't just move on. He started arguing with the judge, raising his voice, insisting that the exclusion of this evidence violated his client's constitutional rights. Federal judges don't expel attorneys for spirited advocacy or passionate arguments. That's expected and happens frequently. What gets lawyers removed is when they cross into disrespect, insubordination, or behavior that threatens the integrity of the proceedings. According to multiple reporters present, Judge Martinez calmly explained for what seemed like the 10th time that the evidence was ruled inadmissible during pretrial proceedings, that those rulings had been appealed and upheld, and that the matter was settled. She instructed Blackburn to move on to his next question. Instead of complying, Blackburn raised his voice and said something along the lines of, "This is a kangaroo court, and everyone knows it." The courtroom fell silent. Prosecutors leaned forward in their seats. The judge's expression, according to CBS News reporter Amanda Chin, transformed instantly from patient to icy. Judge Martinez asked Blackburn if he understood he had just accused her of running a kangaroo court. Incredibly, Blackburn doubled down, stating the exclusion of evidence proved the proceedings were rigged. That's when Trump's co-counsel, attorney Jennifer Walsh, made the situation exponentially worse. According to NBC News, Walsh stood up and joined in, claiming the judge was denying Trump a fair trial and that they had a duty to document the court's bias. Her voice was reportedly loud enough to be heard in the hallway outside. Judge Martinez gave them one chance. She stated that if they sat down, composed themselves, and apologized, she would allow the hearing to continue with a warning. Neither attorney sat down. Instead, according to a New York Times reporter present, Blackburn began citing case law, his voice rising, essentially trying to lecture the judge on constitutional law, while ignoring her direct instruction to sit down and be silent. The decisive moment came when Judge Martinez had clearly had enough. She looked at the bailiffs and said, "Remove counsel from my courtroom." What followed was described as chaotic and unprecedented. The bailiffs approached the defense table. Blackburn and Walsh did not leave voluntarily, according to reporters. They continued arguing even as the bailiffs took them by the arms. Blackburn was reportedly still shouting about constitutional rights as he was escorted through the side door. Walsh was yelling that this would be grounds for appeal and that the judge's actions would be overturned. This wasn't a quiet exit with heads bowed in shame. It was a full-blown ejection with Trump's attorneys resisting every step and ensuring their removal was as loud and dramatic as possible. This incident sent shockwaves through the legal community because such behavior is virtually unheard of. Attorneys are aware that judges have complete authority in their courtrooms. You can disagree with rulings. You can object for the record. You can even appeal. But you don't accuse judges of running kangaroo courts and disobey direct orders. That's not zealous advocacy. It's professional suicide. The defense's strategy of playing to the media rather than winning legal arguments became unsustainable the moment they prioritized creating a spectacle over representing their clients' interests in court. Claims that they were standing up for constitutional principles fell apart when they showed they don't even grasp basic courtroom decorum that first-year law students master. This isn't the first time we've witnessed Trump's attorneys engage in behavior crossing professional lines. Consider Rudy Giuliani, who went from being America's mayor to having his law license suspended in several states. Giuliani made false claims in court about election fraud, presented non-existent evidence, and made accusations he couldn't substantiate. He transitioned from a respected prosecutor to losing his license to practice law because he couldn't stop lying for Trump. Then there was Sidney Powell, who pushed conspiracy theories so outlandish that even other Trump lawyers distanced themselves from her. Powell claimed voting machines were rigged by Venezuela through algorithms created by Hugo Chavez. She filed lawsuits so frivolous that judges sanctioned her. She eventually pleaded guilty to criminal charges in Georgia for her role in the election interference case. Let's not forget Alina Habba, who represented Trump in the Ian Carroll case and was so unprepared and ineffective that the jury awarded Carroll $83 million. Habba repeatedly violated court orders, failed to follow basic procedures, and seemed more interested in making statements for television than actually defending her client effectively. Even John Eastman, the lawyer who devised the scheme to overturn the 2020 election, has been disbarred and indicted. The man was once a respected constitutional law professor, but his work for Trump destroyed his career and may send him to prison. Now, it looks like Blackburn and Walsh are joining this list of Trump attorneys whose careers have been damaged or destroyed by representing him. The pattern is unmistakable. Trump attracts lawyers willing to cross ethical lines, and when they do, they face professional consequences while Trump moves on to the next attorney willing to risk their reputation for him. So, what exactly did these lawyers do that led to the judge having them physically removed? Let's break it down. According to legal experts who reviewed recordings and transcripts, the attorney's conduct violated multiple rules of professional responsibility. First, they directly insulted the judge by calling her courtroom a kangaroo court. That's not protected speech or zealous advocacy. It's contemptuous behavior undermining the judicial process. Second, they refused a direct order from the judge to sit down and stop arguing. When a judge gives you an instruction in their courtroom, you comply immediately. You can object for the record, but you don't simply refuse to follow the order. Third, they attempted to relitigate issues that had already been decided and appealed. The judge had patiently explained this multiple times, but they kept pushing, demonstrating either incompetence or deliberate disruption. Here's the kicker. Legal ethics experts told MSNBC that the attorney's behavior during their removal might constitute additional violations. By continuing to shout and argue while being physically escorted out, they were disrupting court proceedings and creating a scene that could prejudice the jury if this case goes to trial. According to courtroom observers, the entire incident was witnessed by potential jurors waiting in the hallway. Those potential jurors saw Trump's lawyers being physically removed from court while screaming. That's the image that will stick in their minds if they end up on the jury. This leaves Trump in an extraordinarily difficult position. On one side, he needs competent legal representation for serious criminal charges that could send him to prison. His attorneys just demonstrated they're either unwilling or unable to conduct themselves professionally in court. That's devastating for any defendant. On the flip side, he has to decide whether to stand by these attorneys and support their confrontational approach, which means continuing down a path that's clearly failing, or whether to replace them again, which would be his fourth or fifth legal team change, causing further delays and expense. The tricky part is that Trump's public persona requires him to appear strong and defiant. Firing attorneys who got thrown out for being too aggressive might look weak to his base. But keeping attorneys who can't control themselves in court virtually guarantees worse outcomes. So Trump is caught in a bind. He can either publicly support Blackburn and Walsh, frame their removal as proof of judicial bias, and continue with lawyers who just demonstrated catastrophic judgment. That plays to his base, but ensures more courtroom disasters. Or he can quietly replace them with more professional counsel, which requires admitting his previous attorneys were problems and starting over with lawyers who don't know the case as well. That would be the smart legal move, but terrible for his political narrative. It's a mess entirely of his own making. He's created a legal team culture where loyalty and aggression are valued over competence and professionalism. And now that culture has produced attorneys who literally get thrown out of court. This whole scenario is exposing the fundamental problem with Trump's legal strategy. According to legal analysts across the political spectrum, Trump treats courtrooms like political rallies. He wants attorneys who will fight dirty, make scenes, and create content for his supporters. But federal judges don't care about your base or your media strategy. They care about whether you follow the rules and respect the process. Former federal prosecutor Hale told CNN that Trump's legal approach is backwards. He's trying to win in the court of public opinion while losing in actual courts where judges and juries decide his fate. Honig noted that the two attorneys who got thrown out probably thought they were being loyal soldiers, but they actually harmed their client by making him look guilty and out of control. Constitutional law expert Lawrence Tribe added on MSNBC that federal judges have extensive experience with difficult attorneys and contentious cases. For a judge to physically remove counsel from the courtroom means the behavior was egregious beyond anything that could be tolerated. Tribe said that in his 50 years practicing and teaching law, he's only heard of this happening a handful of times, and it always ends badly for the attorney and their client. Even conservative legal commentator Jonathan Turley, who has often defended Trump's legal position, stated on Fox News that the attorney's behavior was indefensible. He said that accusing a judge of running a kangaroo court and refusing to follow orders is essentially malpractice. Turley noted that these attorneys may face disciplinary proceedings before their state bar associations. So let's break down what this could mean, because it's not just an embarrassing courtroom incident. It has serious consequences for Trump's legal situation, his political standing, and the broader rule of law. First up is the immediate case impact. Trump now has to either proceed with attorneys who were just thrown out of court and are likely facing contempt charges, or he has to find replacement counsel immediately. Either option is terrible. If the same attorneys return, the judge will be watching their every move and will have zero patience for further misconduct. If new attorneys come in, they'll need time to get up to speed, which means delays that prosecutors will oppose. The case was already going badly based on the evidence, and now Trump has created a circus that makes him look even worse. Legal observers told Politico that judges tend to remember this kind of behavior. Every future ruling will be influenced by the fact that Trump's team showed such disrespect for the court. That doesn't mean the judge will rule unfairly, but it means Trump has used up any goodwill or benefit of the doubt he might have received. Second, this creates massive problems for Trump's other pending cases. Judges in other jurisdictions are watching this. Prosecutors are taking notes. The narrative that Trump is being unfairly persecuted becomes much harder to maintain when his own attorneys are getting thrown out of court for misconduct. Other defense teams in Trump's various cases now face questions about whether they'll behave similarly. Some competent attorneys may decide representing Trump isn't worth the professional risk if this is the standard of conduct he expects. Looking ahead to broader implications, this incident provides prosecutors and judges in other Trump cases with precedent for imposing strict courtroom rules. If Trump's attorneys can't control themselves in one courtroom, judges elsewhere will implement tighter restrictions preemptively. The political implications are significant too. Republican officials who support Trump now have to either defend attorneys who screamed at a federal judge and got physically removed from court, or they have to distance themselves from the behavior, which means acknowledging Trump's legal team is out of control. According to CNN polling analysis, voters, especially independents and moderate Republicans, view respect for courts and the rule of law as important. When they see Trump's lawyers being dragged out of courtrooms, it reinforces negative perceptions about chaos and lawlessness surrounding Trump. This isn't abstract legal theory, it's visual evidence of dysfunction. Beyond immediate political fallout, this is about whether the judicial system can maintain order and enforce basic professional standards. If Trump's attorneys can scream at judges, refuse orders, and get removed from courtrooms without serious consequences, what message does that send? It would mean powerful defendants can simply ignore judicial authority through their lawyers. That's not how the rule of law works. Judge Martinez's decision to remove the attorneys, while dramatic, reinforced a critical principle that no attorney is above the rules of the court, no matter how famous their client. Courts have to maintain order and dignity for the system to function. When lawyers cross the line, judges must respond decisively. This whole situation is causing reactions across the legal and political world. According to MSNBC's reporting, legal ethics experts are calling for state bar associations to investigate Blackburn and Walsh for potential disciplinary action. Making a scene in federal court accusing a judge of corruption without evidence and refusing direct orders are all grounds for professional discipline, ranging from censure to suspension or even disbarment. Meanwhile, Trump's political supporters are split. Some are praising the attorneys as fighters who stood up to a biased judge. They're treating the removal as a badge of honor and evidence of persecution, but other Trump allies are quietly expressing concern that the legal team's behavior is actually hurting Trump's chances. According to Politico, several Republican senators were asked about the incident and gave non-answers or changed the subject. They clearly don't want to defend lawyers screaming at judges, but they also can't criticize Trump's team without angering the base. Things became even more intense when Judge Martinez issued a written order later that day. According to the Washington Post, the order formally cited both attorneys for contempt of court. It required them to appear at a future hearing to show cause why they shouldn't face sanctions, including fines, suspension from practicing in that court, or referral to their state bar associations for disciplinary proceedings. The order included transcripts of exactly what was said, removing any ambiguity about what happened. Legal experts noted that judges rarely issue written contempt orders the same day unless the conduct was truly egregious. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment response that the judge might reconsider. This was a deliberate, documented finding that Trump's attorneys violated fundamental courtroom rules. The transcripts in the order will now be part of the permanent record and can be used in any future disciplinary proceedings. Let's break down what legal experts are saying about this unprecedented moment. Former federal judge Nancy Gertner appeared on CNN and called the incident a complete failure of professional judgment by Trump's attorneys. She explained that judges give lawyers enormous leeway to advocate for their clients, but there are bright-line rules that cannot be crossed. Accusing a judge of running a kangaroo court crosses that line. Refusing to sit down when ordered crosses that line. Gertner noted that these attorneys chose to sacrifice their professional standing to create a media moment, and that decision will haunt them for the rest of their careers. Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel and prosecutor, said on MSNBC that this incident shows Trump's legal strategy is completely backwards. Instead of focusing on the strongest legal arguments and maintaining credibility with judges, Trump's team seems focused on creating conflict and spectacle. Weissman noted that you cannot win serious criminal cases by having your lawyers thrown out of court. Juries notice that kind of thing and it makes your client look guilty and desperate. Even attorney Alan Dershowitz, who has defended Trump multiple times and represented him during his first impeachment, told Fox News that the attorney's behavior was legally and ethically wrong. Dershowitz said that while he understands the frustration of having evidence excluded, the proper remedy is an appeal, not a tantrum in court. He added that these attorneys have now made any appeal much harder because appellate judges will see their courtroom conduct in the record. So let's break down what this incident means for Trump's immediate legal future. He's now facing criminal charges with a legal team that just demonstrated they can't maintain basic courtroom decorum. The judge in this case has lost any patience she might have had with defense theatrics. Every objection will be scrutinized. Every motion will be viewed skeptically. Trump's attorneys burned whatever goodwill existed in approximately 90 seconds of screaming. If this case goes to trial, the jury pool has been tainted by potential jurors witnessing Trump's lawyers being physically removed from court. That image of attorneys being escorted out by bailiffs while yelling is devastating. Defense attorneys spend enormous time and energy trying to make their clients look sympathetic and reasonable. Trump's team just did the opposite in the most spectacular way possible. The prosecution is now in a stronger position than ever. They can point to this incident as evidence that Trump's legal team has no legitimate defense and resorts to disruption and accusation. Instead, prosecutors don't even need to make that argument explicitly. The facts speak for themselves. Looking ahead to the contempt hearing, Trump's attorneys face a terrible choice. They can apologize to the judge, admit their behavior was wrong, and hope for minimal sanctions, but that means admitting they were wrong, which Trump never wants anyone associated with him to do. It makes him look weak by association. Or they can double down, defend their conduct as necessary, zealous advocacy, and argue the judge was wrong to remove them. That might play well with Trump's base, but virtually guarantees serious sanctions from the judge and probable bar discipline. Either way, these attorneys are in professional jeopardy. The best-case scenario is a fine and a stern warning. The worst cases, suspension from practice, disbarment proceedings, and becoming examples of what not to do in law school ethics classes. It's about so much more than just one chaotic courtroom scene. It's about whether attorneys can undermine judicial authority and courtroom order without consequences. If Blackburn and Walsh face no serious sanctions for this behavior, then we're basically saying lawyers can scream at judges, refuse orders, and get physically removed from court with minimal professional impact. That would mean the entire system of courtroom decorum and respect for judicial authority breaks down. This isn't just about Trump's case. It's about whether the legal profession maintains standards that ensure courts can function. When lawyers forget their officers of the court first and advocates for clients second, the whole system suffers. The question is whether state bar associations and the federal judiciary will respond forcefully enough to make clear this behavior ends careers. So here's the deal. Trump's attorneys got physically thrown out of a federal courtroom after screaming at the judge and refusing to follow her orders. And now they're facing contempt charges that could end their legal careers. This isn't just about one disastrous hearing. It's about the complete collapse of professional standards in Trump's legal representation and what it means for his chances of avoiding conviction. When your own lawyers are being dragged out of court by bailiffs while still yelling, reasonable doubt becomes very difficult to establish and competent legal defense becomes impossible. If this incident stands without serious consequences, then we're watching the legal profession's ethical standards dissolve in real time. So, keep an eye on this. The contempt hearing is scheduled for next week. Judge Martinez has made clear she's considering serious sanctions, and every other judge handling Trump cases is watching to see whether this kind of behavior will be tolerated. The stakes have never been higher, the professional consequences never more severe, and the outcome never more critical for whether courts can maintain basic order and respect. If you found today's reporting valuable and would like to support independent journalism, you'll find a link below. Your support helps keep the newsroom strong and independent. Thank you for watching.